Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Coffee in the Corral. I'm Abigail Hobbs, and I have my lovely teammates with me today, Fiona and Zelenka. I've just come up to say hello. Make sure you check out the video. Zelenka's checking out my coffee right now. Are you thirsty? Is it coffee time, baby? And Rayanne is nearby. Sky is a little bit farther away, taking a break in some different shade. Okay, wow. Okay, Zell, space. You can have coffee, but you can't stand on me. Nothing like having a 1,000-pound baby. There you go. There's your coffee. Hey, everybody, it's just me today with my horses. It's not just me. It's me with my horses today. It's a really beautiful morning out here. I'm sitting in a different part of the corral today. I decided to change things up. You know, I never like to do the same thing all the time. I like to change things so it doesn't get too monotonous. So I'm underneath a different tree, and I had to shimmy halfway up the tree to put the GoPro camera on a branch to get this video for today's podcast. So that was exciting. And Zelle's gonna blow her nose on me. Anyways, I've got some interesting conversation today, so thank you for coming back. I hope you guys had a great week. I am just loving this summertime break. The kids get to sleep in. This morning I slept in. It was just nice. It's really been nice, and I'm trying to live in the present moment and enjoy this summer instead of we're always rushing on to the next thing. That's my tendency. Okay, what's next? What we got to do next? Where are we headed next? Instead of being like, this is wonderful, right now. So that's one thing I love about my podcasting is it brings me into the present moment, especially being out here with my horses. So I'm grateful for that. And Zelenka wants all of my coffee today. All right, you can have a little bit more, but then I need some space. There we go. You like the almond milk, don't you? Yummy. Fiona does not like the coffee, but she does just like to hang out with me and take a nap. So she's taking a little nap here behind me. Okay, there's some things I've been thinking a lot about in the past couple weeks. I've gotten to do a couple jobs with Nate. So every once in a while he'll have a big outside job and he needs some help on it. So he brings his trusty, reliable, hardest working employee, which is me. And I love to be outside and I love working hard. So if he's got an outside job and it requires hard work and sweat, I am there 100%. I've done a couple of inside jobs with him. It's funny. He had this one job recently where he was installing this really big piece of glass for someone's shower. And so he needed my help because he needed someone to help carry in this huge, expensive piece of glass. It was huge, you guys. Anyways, it was a dreadful job because we had to be inside all day and it was inside the customer's house. Zell, let me breathe. Back up. It was inside the customer's house. Good girl. And they were in there, and it's usually an older couple with this really nice house. And so all day, you're trying to be careful not to get dirt anywhere and be really quiet. And I'm just, I don't thrive in those environments where I have to be really careful and clean and quiet. That's the opposite of all things Abigail. So I'm telling Nate, I'm oh, those jobs are so hard. I love the outside jobs because I can just be loud and we can play music and I can get dirty and work really hard. So anyways, recently he had a couple siding jobs where the customer needed him to replace siding on the side of the house. And sometimes they're a week-long job. The one that I did recently was just 3 days, basically to rip out all the old siding and put up new stuff. And since I've done this with Nate now a few times, I'm more comfortable with it. I know the routine, so it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. I enjoy helping and being capable and seeing that like he can rely on me to do things. And so that's cool. But, oh, Fiona's taking a nap back here. She's so close to me and she's just really sleepy. It's such a gift. It is such a gift that this little pony feels peaceful in the presence of a human. Like such a far cry from when I got her 5 years ago. So she's living proof that we can rewire our brains, because she has come to trust people again, and not all people, of course. It's only certain people that have worked really hard to gain her trust, but it's a beautiful gift to me, especially with her being an older horse. So nobody can tell me that people that are older can't change and can't learn, because I've watched it happen with horses. So anyways, I'm getting off track. So in the midst of these jobs, there are some things that I learned from them and that I've been thinking a lot about. And so today I wanted to talk about kind of some of the lessons that I learned through doing this work with Nate. And so I'll talk a little bit about the story of replacing the siding first. So this job, this house I think it was built in the 70s. It's a pretty house. It's in a really pretty neighborhood. It's a nice house, but with it being older, siding doesn't last forever. So our job was to take off this old siding and replace it with new. So we got all the new siding, and we had to pick up all the materials and then carry it and lay it all out. It was a huge job. It's a lot of siding. It was a buttload of siding. Anyways, once we got it all ready, we set up the walk boards because we had to work up really high. So we had ladders and walk boards across and all the stuff. Then was the job of like tearing down the old stuff, right? And in my mind, like, I always think, okay, this is going to be the easy part. This is the part that I can do, is the tearing down. Like, that's something that I feel like doesn't take a lot of talent and skill. Like, you get in there and you rip it out, right? So I get the tools, and Nate has shown me before, so I'm getting more familiar with like which tools to use. Zella's following my hands as I'm talking. She's like following my hand movement with her muzzle because you're cute. So I start working on the siding, and as I start taking it out, I'm realizing, like, because it's so old, they have had to add all these like extra nails, and it's not just to like, wedge the, I don't know the names of all the tools. If Nate was here, he could help me, but the pry bar. So you have to like use the hammer and the pry bar and get that pry bar behind the siding and then start prying it out, right? But then if there's hundreds of nails, which there was because it was so old, and sometimes there's a mixture of like screws and nails depending on what kind of, upkeep has been done over the years. Anyways, as I'm trying to remove all this, I'm realizing, oh my God, this is huge. This is going to take me forever because you can't just pry the siding out because of all the nails. And so then you start trying to get the siding out a little bit so that you can get the pry bar behind the nail and then pull the nail out. But then these nails are old, so then the heads break off. And then you have to figure out you still have to get the nail out. Now it doesn't have the nail head, because in order to put the new siding up, you can't have anything in the way. So what I thought was going to be like, okay, I'm going to get up there, I'm going to rip it out, and then Nate's going to do all the measuring and cutting, and then I'll help him install it. So I'm thinking the installation is going to be the biggest deal if I can just get the shit out, Getting the shit out was not easy. It was the hardest part. It took me for fucking ever. I was up there, and like one piece of siding would take me 30 minutes, and we had so much to take down. Like, sometimes the older the siding was, the more ridiculous and harder it was to get it out. It had been there so long, it had been like stuck to the nails and stuck to the board, and the nails were all rotting and cracking, and the siding's chipping as I'm trying to pull it off, so it's not coming off neatly, and everything's like splintering, and oh my God, it was a mess. It was a mess, and it took me forever. It was exhausting. Okay, and as I'm pulling this siding out, what I'm exposing is the upstairs attic. Okay, so this siding is covering the top part of the house all the way up to the peak. And as I'm pulling the siding out and getting it off, it's exposing the attic, which is full of insulation. Also, attics are the hottest part of the house. So like insulation's blowing out into my face, and hot attic air is just boiling out onto me. And the day that we were doing this job, it was already in the 90s and had like, heat index warning and all this stuff. And we're in the straight sun doing this job. And so we, Nate and I keep having to go down and get the hose and like rinse our head off and rinse our neck off, and trying to stay cool, trying to not overheat. I drank so much water and I was still thirsty. I ended up, like, Jennifer was going to be driving by because she got off work before we did, and she's like, do you need anything? And I was like, I need ice water. And I never say that. I don't even like drinking ice water. It's too cold for me. But I was so steaming and overheating that like I needed ice water. So she went and got us both ice water. But anyways, I say all this because in my mind, I thought the, coming in here and just tearing it down was going to be pretty easy. Pretty straight shot, pretty simple. You just rip it out. And that the hardest thing was going to be the measuring, the cutting, and then installing part. Like that was going to be the complicated, time-consuming part. But it wasn't. We spent probably 3/4 of the job tearing down and cleaning it out. Nate had to go into the attic and rake the insulation away from the edge so it wouldn't all blow out, because we're taking all the siding out. So like the insulation's all right there. So even though he was pulling the insulation out of the way, it still was like blowing out and hot. Whoa. Okay, Fiona keeps blowing her nose on me. You feel better? Is that better? All right. I love you. It was crazy, you guys. It was so crazy. So I was first of all shocked at so we finally get it all cleared out and cleaned out and all of the nails removed, and then you have all the old caulk that's stuck. And before you put the new siding up, sometimes you have to scrape off the old caulk gunk because it's all sticking up and everything's junky and it won't fit in place neatly. So then you got to scrape all the old caulk before you put the new stuff up and re-caulk it. Anyways, when we get all that finally cleared up, I'm like, God, this is going to be the biggest job in the history of siding jobs. Like took us this long to get it ready. And my main job was the, tearing down, ripping out, tearing down, dismantling, all of that. And Nate was down there, and on the ground, he was like, he would come up and measure for the new siding pieces, and then he'd be down there cutting and measuring and stuff. So I would get it ready, and then, so he started bringing the pieces up, and we hold them together and nail it in place. And so I had a nail gun, and we'd put it up and make sure it's all good, and then start nailing it in. And I was like, oh my God, this is going so fast. Once we got the old crap, everything cleared out and cleaned up, putting the siding up was so ridiculously easy. Now I say easy because I didn't have to measure and cut. Nate is the professional and the master at all of that. So he was doing all of the master carpentry stuff. But after he measured and cut everything, putting it back up was ridiculously easy. Boom, put it in place, bam, 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 nail gun it in, done. Next piece, bam, 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 done. Next piece, bam, bam, bam. It was amazing. I was like, oh my God, this is way easier than the tear down part. And I've been thinking a lot about that because I think for me, learning about rebuilding my life, and my passion is about helping people to create lives they love. The creating and the rebuilding is not the hard part. The hard part is the dismantling, the tearing down, the deconstructing of all of the old patterns, the old beliefs, the old messaging, everything we've done our whole life. Getting rid of that so that we can rebuild, that's the hard part. And I think for me, like, I'm tempted to want to skip the tearing down and just rebuild. Like, oh my God, it's so much work. What I realized from these jobs is that the hardest work is that tearing down. It's not just hard work, like, it is a lot of time and a lot of effort. Like, I was sweating like crazy and working my ass off, like ridiculously hard to get all of those nails out, and then they'd have random like staples in there, and you have to use different tools for different things, and things would be breaking off, and then you have to figure out how to get it out anyways, and it's a lot of work. And so the rebuilding, the creating our lives, those are the things that we get to do. But before we do those, we have to first do the really yucky, gross, dirty work, which is the deconstruction, the dismantling. I think about I have this very visual, very tactile memory and picture in my mind of the deconstruction, because I'm up there on the walkboards and I'm like prying really hard, trying to use all my strength, but being careful, because if I just, we're up, I don't know how high, 12, 15 feet off the ground, and I'm like trying to pry this really long, old, tough nail out. And if I put all of my weight into it and then suddenly it comes free, a couple times I almost fell off the walkboards, lost my balance, because, you kind of fall. And I was like, oh crap, and grab the side of the house. And I'm on this, it's not a very big walkboard. It's probably a foot wide. So, like, you have to be careful. You can't just get up there, and that's one thing I realized too, is like, I'm not just getting up there with a hammer and just like, what bam, like smashing everything to pieces. Like, it's a deconstructing. You have to do it methodically. There is a process, and there is a way to do it that works best. I would try other things, and especially when I first started doing these jobs with Nate, he would have to come and be like, okay, no, like, put the pry bar here, and then if you push it this direction, it works better. And I'm like, oh, you don't just get up here with the pry bar and a hammer and just start, yeah! That's what I was kind of picturing. Like, no, you have to be really purposeful, and you have to know what you're doing, and you have to do it in a certain way, in a certain manner, so that you're not just splintering, putting all your effort to like have a bunch of splintered pieces, but then you just have a big mess and you're making your work harder for you. So the goal is to be able to get the siding off in a bigger piece, and hopefully kind of, and sometimes it had to be all together. Like, I couldn't break any of it because Nate needed to measure it. So like, I had to be careful how I just deconstructed it, and how I took things apart, because I would need to save the pieces so Nate could use those to measure with. So it wasn't just demolishing. I wasn't demolishing. There's a difference between deconstructing and demolishing. So, and all this is very interesting to me, because I believe that's the way it is in our lives. Okay. And so in our minds, we have these beliefs, and we can't just demolish them. We can't just go at them with a sledgehammer and think that if we just hit it full force and run as hard as we can just smash it to pieces, and then it's going to be out of our mind, out of our way, and we don't have to deal with it. The thing with these old beliefs, the reason why we can't demolish them, is because we need to deconstruct them. We need to be very intentional, methodical, and mindful, so that we can take it apart and understand it. Understand why we have that belief. Because if we can deconstruct it in a way that we are kind of like, pulling the layers apart, We're not smashing, we're pulling the layers apart, and we're understanding it so that we can replace it. But that's the way that it works. In order to replace it, we must, excuse me, choking here. In order to replace it, we must first understand why we have that. Why we have that certain messaging, or why we have that belief. Why do we have this mindset? What is it about this that we have held on to this for so long? So this deconstructing is very purposeful, and it's the hardest work. I mean, like, as we deconstruct it, I just picture like pulling apart, and the heat from the attic, and the insulation is just itchy and sticky, and you're sweating, and it's gross, and you're like, I don't want to do this. This job is terrible. It's awful. But in order to put the new siding up, the old siding has to come down. We have to dismantle it, and we have to pull it down in a way that we can measure it and know exactly what to replace it with and how we're going to replace it. So I think this is, I don't know, maybe not to you, but to me this is really kind of mind-blowing. It's very important to understand, like, the deconstructing of these mindsets is really important. It's important that we really dig into it, and that we really understand these things that we believe, and that the ways about ourselves. Maybe it's the things that we do, these habits that we have, the things we want to get rid of, but we have such a hard time getting rid of them. Like, the deconstructing of that is the hard part. Like asking ourselves, understanding it, digging into it. Why do I feel that way? Why do I behave this way? What is it about this that keeps me coming back to this? And understanding that first, enough that we can then replace it with what we know to be true, with the new belief, with the one that feels true to us, the one that feels right, the one that brings us peace, instead of the one that keeps us in a place of anxiety and stress. So I'm going to tell you another story here. The last job I did with Nate last week was, it was just a one-day job this time. Sorry, drinking some coffee. But he said, okay, so this lady has this gutter that goes all the way across the back of her house. And it was a seamless gutter. So there was no, like, okay, you take off a piece and then you take off another piece. It was all one gutter. And Nate, that's the main reason why Nate needed my help, was because the gutter wasn't the problem. It was the fascia board, which is the wood behind the gutter that holds the gutter in place. It's, if you have the roof coming down, and then there's the gutter that catches all the water. If you remove that gutter, there's a board behind it that the roof sits on. That's called the fascia board. So the gutter was fine. It was the fascia board that had rotted. So if you looked at the back of the house, you could see the gutter was falling down in the middle, kind of falling off the house, because the board that it was connected to, that went all the way across, was rotting, and water had gotten down on there. So it was really bad. So it looked like her roof was caving in. Sorry, I'm going to move my seat a little bit. Okay. So in order to move that gutter out of the way, they needed to have two people, because it was a super long, like I said, one piece of gutter. So I went with him, we set up, we had walkboards out. Okay, we take off the, we had to take all the nails and screws out of the gutter, and then work together, and we had these boards set up in place to kind of help support the gutter. And then we just flipped the gutter up onto the top of the roof. Sat it up there, which was Nate's idea. It was genius. And then was the job of, okay, now here's all this fascia board. It's all rotten. Like, we've got to tear that out. And I was like, okay, I know how to do this. And at this point, I'm like, I know this is going to be the hardest part, is getting all this nasty, rotten fascia board out of here. So as Nate and I start working on either ends of the roof, kind of working our way towards the middle, start pulling out all of this rotten fascia board, these wasps come out. And as we're pulling this down, you can see up between, where the roof sits, and then there's the joints of, I don't know, it's 2x4 what it is, that run along that, is like the top part of the roof, the skeleton part of the roof, whatever all that's called. I don't know the exact words, but you get the point. So you can see up underneath there. And there is, of course, there's just a bunch of crap and like rotted stuff and old rotten boards up in there and stuff. But there's this, on the right side of the house, there's this huge wasp nest in the corner up in there. And so the wasp, because the roof was kind of, the gutter had fallen down, it had opened up a space. And so they'd all gotten in there and built this huge wasp nest. So then Nate has to go and get his wasp spray, and we like fill up this pump with soapy water. And he used an entire can of wasp spray on it, and there was still tons of wasp. So now the biggest, most dangerous part of this job is dodging the wasp the whole time we're working. So all day long, we're trying to be super aware of these wasps that are very unhappy that we have sprayed their nest. So their nest has been killed, but now there's just thousands of swarming wasps, and it's daytime, so they're very much alive and very angry. So anytime either one of us were working on that side of the roof, we had this sprayer that had soapy water in it. Soapy water doesn't kill them, but it weighs them down. So if you can spray them long enough, they will fall to the ground, and then you smash them. But the problem is, when we're working on that part of the roof, that person would be up on a ladder. And so what we ended up figuring out is it was this like system, this teamwork system, where Nate would get up there to do some work, and then he'd say, okay, watch for wasp. And so I'd come down underneath the ladder where he was working, and as he would be trying to work really fast to like get some screws out or measure some things or put something new in there, I would be watching, and I'd be like, wasp coming in at your right, and a wasp would be dive bombing at his right above him where he couldn't see it, because like he's focused on working on this, and so he'd look up and spray it, and spray, and then it would, if he got it good enough, it would fall to the ground, and then I'd run over and jump on it and smash it, and then he'd start working again. Wasp at your left, two at your left, two at your side. They're coming in on the, and so I'd be yelling these yelling out these warnings, and then he'd grab the sprayer and turn and spray it, and then I'd go and smash it. So it was like we had this teamwork going on, and it was kind of scary because, like, it's a serious thing to deal with wasps and a large amount of them when they're mad, and then you're working right in their area. But it's the only way to get the job done was to kind of cover for each other and call when another wasp was coming in, so we could tag team and make sure that nobody, and we did the whole job and nobody got stung, and I was really grateful because it was definitely kind of scary and dangerous sometimes, but I was thinking about that too, and I thought, okay, here's something else. Like, sometimes, and for me, like, I would like to think that, I could figure everything out myself, and like, if I just take enough time to stop and really dig into why am I feeling what I'm feeling, or why am I behaving the way I'm behaving, why am I having these thoughts, if I could just really take time to dig into those, then I can figure it all out. But the truth is, I can't always figure it all out. I can sometimes, but sometimes I need help. And especially if it's things that have been rooted in my past and kind of like build up over time, they become really difficult and scary and dangerous to navigate on your own. Because we can't see all of the dangers all of the time. We can't see these other things. And so it's helpful to have somebody that can be there with you in that process of deconstructing, because there are literal dangers, and they can be there and they can warn us about these things. Watch out for this, watch out for that. There's professionals, people that therapists and counselors that have gone to school for many years that are trained and have a trained eye to see these, wasp, pretty much, that can be diving in, dive bombing, and we wouldn't see them because we're focused on maybe the deconstruction part. We don't notice these other things. And so to me, it was this other really interesting picture of, how it's important to also have a team member, to have somebody that can help you walk you through that deconstruction that can help keep you safe. Sometimes digging into this stuff, you guys, and I'm sure if you listen to this podcast, I'm sure you know that. I'm sure you know that some of these painful things that we eventually get brave enough to deconstruct, some of them are so scary. And I know there have been times in my life where I have thought, I don't know if I want to be alive anymore. I honestly don't know if it's even worth it. And those moments, those are scary moments, and they're dangerous to navigate on your own. So it's important to have somebody that is capable and confident and trained to be able to help you deconstruct those things and not just survive the deconstruction, but to get all the way through it, all the way to where you can put the new siding up and you have something new in place, right? We're not looking to just survive tearing things down. We want to come all the way through the whole process. We want to make it to the other side where we have new, fresh siding up. We have new beliefs. We have new mindsets. We have new habits. We have new behaviors. We're putting all those in place. So it's important to know yourself well enough to know that this is really scary, and I'm really scared to kind of deconstruct this area. I've kind of put it off because it's hard for me to look at, and know yourself well enough that when you're ready to do that, find a professional or find somebody that you really feel is capable and you feel safe with to help you through that process, to be your team member, to help protect you. So that's a different picture that I feel like really is important to add. It's not just us trying to manage our own stuff. Humans really do need other humans. And we don't need somebody else to come along and tell us the answers. That's not the kind of team member I'm telling you. When Nate was up there doing that, I wasn't saying, hey, move the board a little to the right. Okay, take a 1/4 inch off of there. No, you got the wrong screw. No, you need to hit it from this angle. I wasn't telling him what to do. I was just there to keep him safe and tell him when dangers were coming so that he could do the deconstructing. It is our job to do the deconstructing. We know ourselves the best. It's our body. It's our life. Nobody else needs to tell us how to do that. But we do need them to kind of walk beside us and keep us safe. So there's that story. Okay, I have one more story. I'm so much of a living life and doing these things. I learn these lessons through life. And I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense. And I'm just a very much hands-on person. It's hard for me to just read information and then retain it and understand it. I can memorize it, but I won't understand it. So these little life lessons, they're what stick with me. And I hope they're meaningful to you. That's why I'm sharing them today. So this past weekend, here's my last story. This past weekend, I decided I wanted to do a project. And I wanted to make this white picket fence. There's this area where we have a camper set up. It's next to our shop. And I wanted to put some sort of barrier between the camper and the shop so that the horses couldn't get trapped in this spot, okay? Because the camper is just barely in the horse pasture. So there's this area of if the horses go in here to check things out, and horses are very curious, especially Zell and Rayanna, they're going to be like, oh, what is this new place? And if they went in, they would get stuck. And then, of course, when a horse gets stuck or feels trapped, they freak out. And rightly so. It's very dangerous for a horse, because they're prey animals, to be in a situation where they cannot flee easily. They can't escape easily. So I was just picturing, like, this is not a safe setup. We need to have this blocked off just so no horses get too curious and then find themselves in a jam and then hurt themselves trying to get out. So I thought, I put up this temporary barrier, and it looked really ugly and gross. And I was like, I don't want this area to look like some hillbilly construction site. Like, this is disgusting. So, and I have lived in poverty, and I have lived in storage cans and buses and tents and really junky areas. And so it's really important to me now to make the place where I live look nice. That's very important to me. So I thought, you know what? I want to make some sort of a fence here between the shop and the camper that looks like kind of like a white picket fence. But I'm also not an avid craftsmanshipper. I'm not like this woodworking pro. I'm not Nate, in other words, okay? Let it go. But I do like doing projects, and I love working with wood. I really do. I've loved working wood my whole life and doing these, creative, fun things. So the artsy part of me was like, I want to make something, but I want to use something that we already have. I don't just want to like build a fence, because then we have to go buy materials, and that's going to be money. And, we clearly should have something we can use. So in our shop, there was a bunch of old pallets that we've been saving, because eventually Nate wants to do this, like tear all the pallets apart and then use the wood and do this project in our house. And it's going to be really cool if that ever happens someday. But until then, we have a bunch of pallets sitting in our shop. And there's this one pallet that looked really nice. It was this extra long pallet with these slats that were really close, and they were small. And it was actually a decent looking pallet. It wasn't crappy looking. I was like, you know what? If I could cut that to the right size and paint it white, it would look like a white picket fence. Like, that's so cool. So I asked Nate about my idea, and he's like, yeah, that could work. So I was like, okay, what do I need to work on first? Because like in my mind, I'm like, okay, I just cut it, and then I paint it, and then I schlep it up. But as I have worked with Nate over the years, I learned it's really not that simple. So I was like, what do I need to do first? So he starts telling me, okay, first of all, you need to like take these ends off, and then measure this, and then start cutting this. Anyways, guys, I'm not going to walk you through the whole process, because nobody has time for that. But I'll just say my little schlep it up idea took 2 days. And the fence was already freaking made. It's not like I was making a fence. I was just taking this pallet, resizing it, and then, of course, in all of that process, there's like, and then you have to level it out. So you have to add blocks of wood to this side, and you need more for this side than that side, so then you got to cut that. And then you've got to add extra reinforcers on the back of the pallet, because since you chopped it, you took the reinforcers off, so then you chopped new ones, you add those ones on, and then it's super splintery. And I'm thinking, if we're like walking by this pretty little fence and people will go to lean on it or something and then get this ginormous splinter, like, no, I want to make it people friendly. I want to make it look nice. And so then I have to start sanding it down with this wire sander that I've never used. And then I've got to get sanding paper, because, then it's like rough everywhere. And as I'm doing all that, I'm like, okay, now I can paint it. And then it's like, well, no, first you have to like sand off all the fronts of the boards. And then anyways, it was a lot, you guys. And Nate had some leftover paint. So he's like, well, you could use this primer, start with this white primer, and then paint over that. So like, okay, I'll start with the white primer. And I thought, painting this palette took forever. I was like, wow, I didn't know there were so many nooks and crannies on a palette, for heaven's sakes. It felt like painting a house, trying to get all, the front of it, and then you got to get the sides of the boards, and you have to flip it around, and you have to get underneath of everything and around everything, and because it was put together as a pallet, then you're trying to smash your hand between boards to get, oh my God. Anyways, and then because it's this old pallet that's been out in the sun for who knows how long, it soaks up all the paints. Then I have to put another coat of paint onto it. And then it was like, oh, okay, so that was just primer. It's not really meant to cover. And so I ended up getting this other paint that Nate had, which was like this. Anyways, I put like 4 or 5 coats of paint on this palette. Oh, it was this process. And I'm proud to say that it is so cute, you guys. Like, I finally got it finished yesterday. I put on another coat of paint, did the last minute touch-ups. Nate put the little bracket on and we stuck it on, and it's so cute. It's really cute. It turned out great. But I went to Nate afterwards and I fell down at the picnic table, just exhausted. I was like, why is recycling something so much harder than just making something new? And Nate kind of got this big smile on his face. He's like, yeah, you're right. I was like, I didn't imagine. I thought because I was just using something we already had, it was going to make it so much easier. But it was so much harder. It took twice the amount of work, as if just taking some new boards and making a, white picket fence to make it what I'm calling it, our white pallet fence. To make a white pallet fence, was so much harder. Go figure. And I realized, this is why, I've shopped at stores before, and especially, I went to a boutique a couple months ago, and there was these recycled purses. I was like, oh, recycled purses, these are so cute. They must not be that expensive since they're recycled. Nope. They're very expensive. And I remember being like, what? This is recycled. I mean, come on, people. You're using materials you had. And now I'm like, I have so much respect for those people that make recycled purses. Oh my God. Yes, it's worth $80. Of course they're selling his purses for $80 because of all the damn work they put into them. It is a lot of work to recycle things. And I've been thinking about that, wow, taking something old and completely stripping it, redoing it, and making it how you want it to be and reusing it is so much more work. But that's what we're doing in life. We don't get to just, oh, I want a new brain. So I'm going to get on Amazon and get 2-day shipping and just take this old brain out because I don't like it and it's gross and it needs a lot of work. I don't really feel like doing that. So I'm just going to take this out and put a new brain in. We can't do that. It would be nice. And that's, the main reason why I wanted to recycle something is because I don't just have money to go and buy new materials and just build new things. That's a lot of money. So yes, use something that we have. And even the paint I used was paint that we had, which is one reason why I had to do so many coats on it, was because it wasn't really the right paint. So it took more. Anyways, my point is we don't have the privilege of just replacing our brain or replacing, oh, I don't like the life I've lived, so I'm just going to completely pick a new one and start over. We have to use what we have. We have to recycle it. And it's shit hard work. And it is a forever process. We will always be recycling and stripping it down and sanding it and fixing it up and, cutting old things off and replacing and putting new things, but we're reusing it. And it's hard. And it's a lot of work. And I was asking Nate when we were doing siding, is at one point, we were moving this, getting rid of all the stuff that we tore down, the old siding we had to take to the dump. So we were loading the trailer up And there were some other old materials in her garage that we were getting out. And one of them was really heavy. I was like, what is this? And Nate's like, it's old, it's an old siding. I'm like, this doesn't even feel like siding. He's like, it's called cement board. I was like, what? He's like, yeah. I was like, are you serious? He's like, yeah, it literally is what the name says. Like, it's board that's made out of cement. And I was like, do people put this on the outside of their houses? He's like, yeah. I'm like, why? He's like, because you never have to replace it. If you put cement board on the exterior of your house, you never have to replace it. It's cement. It's not going to rot. It's not going to crack. It's not going to get worn down from the sun. It's just like one and done. And I was just amazed. I was carrying that cement board out. I was like, it was ugly and it was very heavy. And I was like, how do you put this on the house? How do you connect it to the house? He's like, you have to use really special types of screws and have special tools to put this cement board up with. And I've been thinking about that. I was like, that would be really nice. In one way, like there's a lot of draw to that cement board. I thought if you could put cement, if we could build a house and put cement board on the outside, like we'd never have to redo it. That would be amazing. But here's the thing. Like, I've been thinking about it. I'm like, as far as like, our lives go and our mind is not made out of cement board. Like, our brains are designed to constantly be changed, to grow. They are designed for continual upkeep, right? So I think about our brains in the way of like, the siding on the side of the house that only lasts for so long. And then like rain gets behind it and rots the wood, and then you got to pull it off, and then it gets brittle. The siding gets brittle, needs to be replaced. And our brain is like that. Like, it is designed for continual upkeep. It's not ever this one and done. So this deconstructing that we do so that we can replace new thing and put new stuff in, it's not this, okay, now we've deconstructed and we've replaced this new siding, so we'll never have to do it again. We don't get to replace it with cement board, unfortunately. I'm sorry. I know it would be nice. Seriously, I would love it if it could be a one and done thing, but it's not. Our brains are not designed for that. They're very malleable. They're designed to constantly learn and grow and change. So we have to think about that. And for me, I'm like, okay, my brain is this beautiful, it's a beautiful part of me that will continually need me to check up on it and be like, oh, this is getting old. This needs to be, I need to get rid of this and replace it with this. And I need to recycle this over here. And like constantly, it's kind of like we do in our houses. Like if you own a house and you start saying, oh, it looks like there's water leaking in up here in the corner. Like, you want to get to that as soon as possible before it starts ruining your whole house, before it starts rotting your whole house. It's important that you keep an eye on these things in your house, right? And intentional and good house owners are always aware, because you want to catch something as quick as you can so that you can get to the issue, fix it, replace what needs to be replaced, and take care of it before it becomes a huge problem. The thing is, sometimes in life, we don't realize even all of these huge problems until our 40s. When there's a lot of areas where there's probably rotted fascia board and brittle siding and things that have been caving in and collapsing for years. And we're just doing the best we can because we didn't even know what was happening under there. We don't even know all the wasp nests that have been built and hidden, right? And so as we start to deconstruct these things, it's a lot of work. And it can be really overwhelming. So we have to take it one job at a time. And we have to know, do we need someone to help me through that? Do I need a team member here? You know, is this something that I can start with? Or do I really need to get professional help? And just pacing ourselves, taking one job at a time. Like first, I'm just going to work on this section of the roof. And then I'm going to move into the, you know, how it's affected the interior walls. Whatever it is, be patient with yourself. Be wise. Don't try to demolish the whole house and think that you're going to just demolish it and then bring a new one in. It doesn't work that way. We have to be intentional. We have to be aware, and we have to know what we can do and what we can handle, how much we can handle, and then take breaks. Give ourselves time to take breaks. And that's something on the job too, when I was doing that with Nate. Like, I'm so much of a go-getter and get this shit done, is like I would be up there on the walkboard just like hammering and prying, like sweating, and then like getting dizzy way up 15 feet in the air. And then Nate be like, honey, you need to come down and get some water. Like, take a break in the shade for a minute. And that was really hard for me. I don't like to take breaks. Like, damn it, I want to get it done so then I can take a break and feel good about myself. But that's not wise, especially in the heat of the day, especially when you have this big project. Like, you need to pace yourself. You need to take breaks as you need them. You need to make sure someone can bring you ice water. You need to get your head wet sometimes. You need to step away from it, go eat some lunch. Like, all of that's applicable. You can come back to it and do more deconstructing and then start putting things in place. And man, when you do the hard work, like it was such a good feeling to, after getting everything dismantled and pulled away and cleaned up, to put those new siding pieces in place felt so damn good. It was like, oh my God, this feels so good. The rebuilding, the creating something new, the replacing feels so good. When you get to that point, you've worked so hard to prepare and make a new space for this new thinking. Feels so good. And then you get to just give yourself time to step back and go, wow. And I remember, like, I took before pictures and after pictures, and I would just step back at the end of the day and look at the job and be like, that looks so much better. This is so exciting to see this new, and it was a process, and it took time, it took days, but to watch this birth of the new siding come up looked like a new house. But it wasn't a new house. We were just replacing some things, recycling some things. You know, when we did the gutter job, we replaced the fascia board, but we used all this same gutter. We were able to put that back up and get everything in place. Anyways, I hope that is helpful to you guys in some small way or big way, whatever. But because to me, it helps me to understand why it's so difficult, why this deconstructing is so painful sometimes, so time consuming, takes so much effort and energy. And it's just hard. It's just shit hard. It is not for wimps. Like, if you are in the process of deconstructing parts of your life, parts of your beliefs, your mind, your thought processes, your behaviors, if you're in the process of that, you're amazing. You are a badass, because it takes a strong person to do that. Somebody with a lot of determination and a lot of guts and a lot of strength. Okay? Up there working on the side of the house, somebody that didn't have muscles and wasn't strong could not have done that. But like, it takes being in shape. It takes mental fortitude to deconstruct these things and to tear them down and to really dig into it and to understand it. So I looked up the word deconstruct and I thought, oh my God, this is so interesting. So I had to read this. The word deconstruct is a verb, and it means, here's the meaning. Analyze. To deconstruct is to analyze by deconstruction. typically in order to expose its hidden internal assumptions and contradictions and subvert its apparent significance or unity. Okay, so I get lost with big words. So I'm going to kind of tear this down a little bit for you. So the part that really stuck out to me, I was like, okay, to analyze by deconstruction. So as you're deconstructing, you're analyzing it. Typically, in order to expose its hidden internal assumptions and contradictions. So when we are deconstructing these things in our mind, we are exposing these hidden internal assumptions and contradictions. And that's how we understand ourselves better. That's how we understand why we have the behaviors we have, why things are hard for us, why we feel the way we feel. It makes sense to us. We're like, oh, look at these. There's these hidden assumptions and these contradictions and these things, these beliefs that have been told. They're not true. But here's why I've believed them. And the last part is, and subvert. And I looked up the word subvert because I'm like, I actually don't know what subvert means. So in other words, it's to destabilize, to overthrow. So I like the word destabilize. And destabilize its apparent significance or unity. A lot of times it's easy to feel like we hold on to these things because they have apparent significance, right? Or this unity that we thought, this is true. This is a true belief. And here's why, because of this apparent significance, it has this unity that makes sense to us. But when we deconstruct it, and we're able to destabilize the apparent significance or unity and realize, no, this actually is not true. It's a lie. I believe this. But as I expose the hidden internal assumptions, I realize these are assumptions and they're contradictions. And I can destabilize that. I can overthrow this thinking because it doesn't have apparent significance in my life. These aren't really true things. They were just things that I was told. These were lies. And I thought, for me, that here's the, and I'm going to bring this really, I'm going to close with making this very personal. I thought about, what is the messaging right now that I am working on deconstructing? And right now, I think the biggest thing is that I realize I'm always trying to determine if what bothers me is legit or not. So as I go through life, something will bother me, and I'm like, that bothers me. And I instantly start judging whether I'm allowed to let it bother me or not. So what happens in my brain is I start thinking, is this really a big deal? Are you just making a big deal about it? You're probably just, are you being selfish? Maybe you're being too worried. Maybe you're just being too controlling. Maybe it's you being too controlling. Maybe you're being too picky. You're just a really picky person. Like, this shouldn't bother you. And so I start this one little thing, it can be something so simple. It just bothers me for a half a second. And then I spend the rest of the day going over and over in my mind, trying to figure out if I'm allowed to let this bother me or not. And it's ridiculous because I'm realizing, why in the world do I have to have this set of standards of, this is not worthy of bothering you? Who am I comparing myself against? What is the standard? And it's just because I have been wired with so many beliefs to not trust myself and to think that I'm just making too big of a deal of things. I'm just too worried, or I'm too picky, or I'm just too much. And I shouldn't be this way, because if it wouldn't bother somebody else, then it shouldn't bother me. But I grew up in a fucking cult. And so, of course, it was advantageous to them and to the people controlling me and to the people in my environment to always downplay what I felt and what I thought and tell me, no, that's too much. That's not this. That's this. So I just grew up believing to not trust anything and to always judge and doubt myself and to criticize criticize myself. So it's like, I don't even get to the point of saying, hey, like, this bugs me. I spend so much time telling myself, this shouldn't bug you. Really, if this was somebody else, they wouldn't have a problem with this. Nate wouldn't even think twice about it, or so-and-so, this wouldn't bother them, or Jennifer's always really kind about this. Why does this bug you over here? Like, it's ridiculous. But that's, I think, for me, the deconstructing that I'm trying to work on right now is I want to get to the point to where when something bothers me, I pay attention to it and I go, oh, that bugs me. I'm going to say something about that. And not have to go to the 50,000 hours I spend on, is this a big enough deal for me to say something about? Is it okay that I feel bothered about this? Because the truth is, like, I cannot ever change. I've never been able to change. I have tried, but I've never been able to change the fact that certain things bother me. I've tried to beat myself up and beat myself down and smash these feelings inside when I get bothered my whole life. I've never been able to succeed in that. I've just suppressed them. What I've done is I have silenced myself and suppressed these feelings. But I've never been able to fucking get rid of them. So now I'm at a point in my life where I'm like, these things, I feel them in my body. They bother me. I'm tired of doubting myself. I'm tired of questioning myself. It's like all the voices of my past, they come and they just barrage me. And they make me doubt myself so much. I want to get to the point where I just go, oh, that bothered me. Better say something. And that's it. It doesn't matter if everybody else in the entire world is fine with it. If I'm not fine with it, then I'm not fine with it. The end. We're going to talk about it and we're going to find a way that I can move forward with peace and feel seen and taken care of and valued. Anyways, yeah, that's what I'm working on. So that's what I will be deconstructing, and it's not easy. It's messy and it's sticky and stinky and sweaty and hard and exhausting, but I love you guys. I think you're incredible. I continue to show up here even though I doubt myself a lot. I've had to stop like checking to see how many plays are on my podcast because it's very interesting to me because I have like lots of plays on like the story of my life. Those are the most popular, and then they dropped way down after I stopped talking about my story. And I think what a lot of that is because probably the cult members found out about my podcast and all jumped on to hear the story and to see what I was saying about them. And then they don't really care about me, so it's not like they actually want to know about what's going on with my life now. So anyways, that's the story I tell myself. Because it's easy to feel like, there's not a lot of people that listen to it, and is this really worth my time and effort? But I've gotten some feedback from a few people. And the few people that have told me that my podcasts are meaningful, those people really matter to me. And if I can make a difference in just a few people's lives, that's worth it to me. I don't have to be famous. I wouldn't mind being famous. That sounds fun. But I also I value people. So I just remind myself that, you know what? I don't have to be here for the masses. I can be here for a few people. So thank you to the people that value this and continue to show up and share my podcast. And I hope today's long podcast episode with just me out here in the pasture with my horses was meaningful to you in a way, and hopefully encouraging, and you feel supported in your healing journey. That's my biggest thing, is like I really do want you guys to feel supported. Like, I get it, it is shit hard, and however I can make that easier for you, I want to do that. So I love you. I will let you all go. Thank you. And yeah, I'll see you next week. I don't think I have anything amazing to say at the end. Oh yeah, I do have something amazing to say at the end. I just wrote some notes down for this episode today. And as I was looking at the word deconstruct and kind of reading about the meanings and different stuff about it, I just all of a sudden realized, this was like an epiphany to me. I was like, this is a quote that I made up and I want to put on my whiteboard in my house because it to me, it's simple, but like it's profound. Deconstructing always happens before improvement. Let that sink in. Deconstructing always happens before improvement. In order to improve our lives, to make them better, we have to always start with the hard part, which is deconstructing. I love you. I'm here for you. I'm cheering you on. And I'll see you next week.